All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. My name is Melanie Dizon. I'm the Director of Education and Content at the Davis Phinney Foundation, and super happy to be here today with Lorraine and Annie. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Doing great. Thank you.
Awesome. So, many people in our community know who you are, but I would love it if you would just share a little bit about yourself, Lorraine and Annie, and tell us how we all got here.
May I start? Yes, of course. I'm an ambassador, of course, and that's wonderful. Wonderful experience because I really like to focus on live well today. That's my thing, I guess you could say. And so I really resonated with Davis Phinney Foundation because of that. And then more recently, started with Healthy Parkinson's Communities as a leader of a community action council. And Annie is on this with me, and she's going to tell you more about what we've done together as a team with some other faculty folks here. A retired professor in the Department of Kinesiology and Nutrition, but don't ask me about nutrition, not my thing. I like sugar and I like carbs, and I have to pay attention to that with my meds and Parkinson's more than I ever did before. Love activity. I've always exercised. During your adult life, it kind of goes up and down as life circumstances allow. But primarily, I used to be a runner. Now I walk more. Swimming is marvelous. I used to be a scuba diver. My husband doesn't anymore, so I don't either. But to have some marvelous, marvelous memories from scuba diving and all things aquatic. And then I met Annie.
Aquatic. I like that.
I met Annie when she was one of my students.
Oh, wow.
Love it. And now here she is with her doctorate and teaching at the university. And so, Annie, take it away.
Yeah. I'm Annie Bane, and I teach at Abilene Christian University. I'm a professor in the kinesiology and nutrition department. And yes, Dr. Wilson, I can't say Lorraine. Dr. Wilson was my professor, and she was amazing and had a huge impact in my life. And I didn't know what journey my path would lead me to, but I always knew that I admired her and what she did, and she's helped to streamline a lot of the decisions that I have made, and just the example that she set. So I got my doctorate and ended up coming here to ACU and teaching and doing Parkinson's research. And that wasn't even when I came here, I was ABD, which means all but dissertation.
Right.
And I had actually 3 different topics and 3 different chapter 1 through 3 written for my dissertation. And anyway, it ended up, it happened to be, I did research with Parkinson's. And I just fell in love with how impactful exercise is for Parkinson's disease. And, that had been my world, is, research with exercise. And then with Parkinson's, it's just, I've fallen in love with, of course, the people that we work with. And then this is the biggest go-getter in the world. So she's helped me a lot in my journey and my path. And I just so grateful to have been on this journey so far.
Yeah, what a mentor.
Yes.
How that's my dog in the background. Sorry about that. How lucky you are to have Lorraine as your mentor. Wish we could all be so lucky.
I know. That
Right?
is so true. Yes, you're
Yeah.
exactly right.
So I'd love to dig in a little bit about that research. So what are some of the projects that you guys have been working on?
Well, we might as well do it sequentially.
Yeah.
The first one, and let me back up for just a moment. I love it when you ask a question and a person's immediate answer is first in their eyes and then their mouth says yes. And I was so fortunate. I went to Annie and some other folks at another local university in kinesiology, and to someone in PT, OT, nutrition, music. And we gathered this team. And they all said yes when we talked about research. So that first one, to tie folks together, used our music professor to create these playlists, essentially, based on the cadence that person needed to do their walks and to improve. So every 2 weeks, they would either increase time and or speed. And so the music would change. And that was really marvelous. And then not based on that, but contrasted to that was persons who did resistance training. And then we had a group that did both. And so that was where we started with meeting the people in the area that have Parkinson's and we felt like we had to dig. I mean, they weren't really hiding under a rock, but we didn't know what rock to look for.
Right.
Yeah. But eventually,
right.
we got enough folks, and a
Mhm.
small number, because how is your N going to be very large when it's people with Parkinson's in a town of 125 or so thousand, right? But we did good. And also what I loved is that we had undergrad students working with us, and what a great experience for them.
Yeah.
And they were able to do poster presentations for American College of Sports Medicine.
Mhm.
And so again, helping as far as education goes, not only educate and have people be aware about Parkinson's, but have the college students be aware of what they can do. I mean, it was just marvelous.
Yeah.
And then you go to the next one.
Yeah. So we completed that project, and that actually wasn't a part of my dissertation. I proposed that, and it was shut down. And
Oh,
so I said, we're going to do this anyway, and we did, and it was amazing. I think that was kind of the seed to something really great. It brought a lot of people together who are like-minded.
what were some of the, so you said you presented a poster. What were some of the
Mhm.
results that you saw on that initial?
So we looked at resistance training with instability. And so we would do just very simple things like putting a balance disc under, we would start with something simple like the seat. So if you're sitting and you're doing seated chest press, you would put a balance disc after everything was progressive. It's, just a concept with, are we progressing with volume, intensity, or with the stability aspect of it? So part of the progression was instability. So simply putting a balance disc under the seat when someone is doing chest press changes the whole dynamic. And it's unbelievable. And you can speak to this, how different it is. I mean, your brain has to work in a completely different way. So this higher motor involvement is what we wanted to initiate. And it's phenomenal how it can really it can make you control something that you realized you didn't have a whole lot of control over, and you have to do that. So we would start with the seat, we would go to the feet, and you would have a balance disc under your feet and underneath your seat, and you would have to work really hard, and it changes up everything. It's amazing. So we did that, and of course with the cadence walking, it also is a completely different dynamic. And we had everyone who was walking, they were guided by someone to make sure that they kept the tempo. So we would have one of the research volunteers, some of our students, walk with a person with Parkinson's, and they would listen to that cadence, and they would hit those steps and make sure they're hitting the steps with the metronome. So it was really intriguing, but it brought about community, which was the best thing. We saw some phenomenal results, but the main thing, when you run the statistics and you see, we had a small group at that point, but whenever you see the statistics, what we saw was this cross training effect. So whenever you have aerobic and strength training in together, you're going to see better results with strength. You're going to see better biomotor abilities improve. You're going to see improvements in grip strength and things like that. So the results of the study were, if you isolate just aerobic or you isolate just resistance, you don't see the improvement that you do whenever you combine the two, which this has been your field for forever, and it's been my field as well. And I just think this is, this, you do resistance training, and we tend to find something that we really love.
Right.
Some people are runners, or, you're a swimmer. And so we tend to just stick with that thing we really enjoy instead of doing the things maybe we don't enjoy as much. For example, I hate running, but I make myself do it. So it's kind of that, yes, you need a little bit of everything. And what we've done is now we do an outreach program, and we add a lot more neuromuscular involvement and do some neuromuscular exercises as well with this outreach program. Even though we're not collecting data right now, that's what
Right.
we're doing. So that's,
So,
yeah.
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, that's just the basis that we found with that first study that we did, is you need a combination of both.
Yeah. So did it matter when you were pairing them? Did it matter that you were doing them one after the next? Did it matter if it was just one, separated by days? Was there any sort of differentiation depending upon when they were done?
So my experience has been that if you separate by days, that's best. So if you can devote a day to cardio and cardiovascular exercise, it can be, I always say you need to, and we kind of joke about this a little bit, because we know you have to physiologically disrupt your body. And that doesn't feel good. And you don't have to do it all the time, but this,
Especially if you're not a person who's exercised, and now we're saying, "Hey, guess what? You better exercise." Real
yes,
uncomfortable.
right. And so a 5-minute walk may be physiologically disrupting. But
Mhm.
when you get good at that, then it may be 10 and it may be a 20 and then 30 eventually. So the cadence is something that you can do on a bike. You can do it on a treadmill. You can even do it with a rower, just whatever you feel comfortable with. Even one of those feet cranks, simple
Kitten
cranks.
step, yep.
Yeah, you can sit at your desk and do it, but the cadence is the important part, and then you progressively overload with the volume. So you add more distance to what you're doing, and then you add more time to what you're doing, and then intensity can be increased a little bit as well. So you go a little bit faster and that kind of thing. So I like separate days though because of the energy system use. So you're going to tend to with cardiovascular, you're going to use more fat energy. And you're going to, so it's different energy system. Oftentimes, switching over energy systems, especially how you order exercise, can be extremely exhausting. So a lot of times, if people do cardio first and a good bout of progressive overload cardio, their stamina for strength training is not great, and it's going to suffer. They're not going to be able to recruit the muscle mass, the muscle fibers that they're supposed to recruit. They're not going to be able to do what they're supposed to do to be able to get the most out of their routine. That's not going to be very effective or efficient. Um,
Right.
so I like to separate those. So if you, and there's exceptions to all of this, but generally speaking, with strength training, I think that it's good to do a side because you need a really good amount of time to be able to do it. You need rest time is crucial. If you don't take rest time in between your sets, then you are not going to get the quality of reps that you need in. You're not going to be able to target that area of your brain that requires more stabilization. It's just not going to be as effective of a workout. So for the most effective workouts, if you can separate those, and what we did was 2 days of cardio and 2 days of resistance training with instability.
Okay. Lorraine, I know you are definitely somebody who, if they don't work out, you feel it. You're already like, whew, this not feeling as good as I could feel, right?
Yes.
So what do you notice in terms of your symptom management, sort of during the workouts, immediately post, and then how long do they typically last for you? And does it differ depending on whether you're doing cardio or strength training?
The strength training, I prefer 3 days a week for me. And typically, if I do a short routine, just if I'm not in the mood, but I'm there, do a short routine and then at least I've done it. And that's better than skipping it.
Mhm.
Or maybe I'm pressed for time. There's just a day that's busy, but that's the day I'm going to do it. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do about 45 to 60 minutes of strength training, but it's also got some, not much cognitive, but some balance and that built in. So the other days I will, depending on season, what's the weather like, etc. But things that I like to do are walk on the treadmill. And one of the reasons I like the treadmill, it's a forced cadence, almost like listening to music. Although the music, you can fight it, but the treadmill, you'd best not.
Right.
And what's really neat, the Human Performance Lab is where most of us do our guided exercise. I tend to be kind of solo, but that's okay. I'll ask for help if I need something. But we have a treadmill that is anti-gravity. And so for some of our folks where it's difficult to walk, by putting them in that treadmill, they can
Oh,
walk.
mhm.
And
Okay, so wait, what is an anti-gravity
yeah,
treadmill?
yeah. Have you never seen one, Mal?
No, and I am obsessed with my treadmill. It's my favorite thing I have ever owned in my life. So what is the anti-gravity one?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
It is. Yep.
we'll
It's
diverge. You tell her about that,
okay.
and then I'll go back to
Okay,
cardio.
sure. It is amazing. It offers support. So you get inside, you put on almost scuba material
Yeah, a neoprene
shorts.
short with a big fancy zipper around it.
Yep.
You can
Has a
zipper yourself in.
Yep, you zip yourself in, and then it blows up with air and it takes your weight off. And then you want to load 50% typically or higher of your actual weight. And what I have noticed,
Wow.
and we haven't officially done a research study with this, but it would be amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
we just got it last year.
yeah, we just got, yeah. And it's what I've seen is the cadence changes, and there's a camera right in front of our folks, and they can look and say, oh, my right foot's dragging a little bit. I don't even feel it. I don't know that, but I can correct that. And the most drastic change I've seen is this sweet 9-year-old lady from Italy. She has such a strong accent, and she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, probably 15 years ago. But she's 90, and she takes those little bitty stutter steps. Those little
Okay,
bitty,
so
Alter G.
yeah,
there it is.
That's it.
yeah.
That is so cool.
Huh? Yep. So she takes these little bitty steps. She falls all of the time, and anything going backwards, she has major issues with. So when we get her on there, she's little bitty. We're short, and she's way shorter than we are. We're about the
Bittier, bittier than Lorraine is.
Yeah, she's little. Yes, she is. She is tiny, but she gets about 3 inches taller. She goes from here to here. And her steps are, she clears her toe to her heel, which is huge.
Wow.
And she looks like a different person on the treadmill, and she loves it. I mean, that is the highlight of her whole entire week, is to get there and just to walk. And she went from fatiguing at about 2 minutes all the way up to 20 minutes. So it's been such a neat, unexpected value to our lab. We just happened to come across it because our athletic department purchased it, and they didn't want it in their weight room taking up room, and the athletic trainers still use it. So we were fortunate enough to get in our lab and utilize it. And I see some really amazing things. Another great story is a man who has Parkinson's, who works at the university. He is a soccer referee. Is it a referee or I think a referee? Whatever. Yeah,
so.
he stopped doing it, and he loves it. His stride wasn't there, and moving backwards was something he didn't feel comfortable with.
And uneven terrain. Because he had one foot that was really difficult.
Yep. So he started walking, and he moves a little fast, but then he's jogging now, and then I have him walking backwards. You can put it backwards, and he's walking backwards on the treadmill as well. And it's just it's really, really neat, because you can put yourself in a safe situation. You're not going to fall in there. I won't say you're not. It's not likely that you will fall whenever you have this thing holding you up, and you feel more comfortable. You can see your stride. You can see what you're doing right or wrong, and you can correct it. And then you are able to go faster and a little bit harder than you would otherwise, because you feel safer, and you don't have as much of your weight on your body.
Right. That is so cool.
Well, and one of the things I love about that treadmill is that it reminds me of, if you can't walk under normal circumstances, and this lets you walk, what a victory. Right. And when we were doing some of the next study, which Annie will tell you about, that she did use for her dissertation, blood flow restriction for strength training, people might not be able to work out at a high percentage, but by putting them in that situation, they get the benefit as if they did. It's amazing.
That's right.
Yeah. And so again, I'm going to finish my cardio quickly, and then we'll move on. But for cardio, again, walking, cycling is really important. I like an upright bike, but my husband went to a recumbent trike, so I also have one. So I like riding either way. And you can go faster on a bike, but that's okay. And then I would say that's swimming. The fun thing is there's a window right in front of me here. And normally when I look out in the yard, I would see my pool. And I'm very soothed by water. I love water. It's just part of me. It's so important. Well, now I see dirt because we had to fill the pool.
Oh, no.
But here's what's good, Mel. We have a swim spa. So you got one. You can swim on this end and spa on that end. It's got all the jets, and so you swim against the current.
Oh, yeah.
We just now are installing it, so I'll get to try a new cardio. Heated water, trying not to let it be too hot.
Oh, wow. The next one we do, we're going to have to do in the heated spa. I mean, we're just going to have you live doing it.
That sounds good.
The funny thing is, Lorraine, when I think about you, I think of a lot of different things, but one of the things is that you have a pool, and I always think of you next to a pool. Those are my two favorite things, pools and the rain.
Oh, you're sweet.
Now I'm glad
I miss seeing the pool, but I don't miss maintaining it.
I bet, right?
It was not heated, so we could use it 3 months out of the year. but we had money spent on it 12 months and effort to keep it clean because we didn't let it get dirty. It's not pretty when it's dirty.
No, it's what we do, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
So this Audrey says, I can't believe that y'all are just down the street. She's waving.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay. So your cardio, usually swim. Now you're going to get to do
more swimming really year round and I could go to the university and swim, but that's like 6 a.m. or lunch, or
it's pretty limited with hours and maintenance and all sorts of stuff.
And they keep it too cold. When I ran the pool, and of course there's 2 pools. So the not competitive really, but the lap swimming pool, I don't mind if it's 80, 78. I'm not a fan of, but I know swimmers like it. I never did like it cold. The leisure pool, 82, 84. But they, for some reason, don't want us to swim in it. And sometimes I go to the Y pool and it's more crowded and not very nice. No offense to our Y.
Yeah.
So, finding water.
Yeah.
It's an issue.
It is.
And we have a lake house, but lake water, and boats,
Right.
Yeah.
So sounds like you found the great solution.
Hope so.
Yep.
Hope so.
And that's the thing too about you is you're more cardiovascular, swimming especially, but bike, you ran marathons, all of that. I'm more weightlifting. I was a pole vaulter. And so I like short distance, explosive stuff. That's what I like, lifting. But you make yourself do the things, like you lift 3 days a week. You make yourself do the things, even if you can find a way to enjoy it, but it's 1 hour. It just, you get through it, you do it, and you know that it's benefiting your body. It's not about the enjoyment aspect of it because you enjoy the benefits from it. And I think that's the biggest thing is don't just get stuck with one thing that you really make yourself do the weightlifting that you're like, I don't want to do this, but I'm going to make myself do it because it's good for me. And you just remind yourself of those things. And I think that's huge for anyone trying to benefit from exercise in any realm, not just with Parkinson's disease.
Right.
Well, that brings me to the concept of an exercise accountability partner. Just like with Parkinson's, there's accountability might not be quite the right word, but again, building relationships or supporting each other, all of that is important. So if you don't like the resistance training, well, the fun news is I get to meet and talk to people while I'm up there working out. It's social. Right. And then with cardio, I've always really been a loner for cardio. I like to run alone, ride alone, whatever. But now at this age and with Parkinson's, especially, it's more important. And I feel like I'm bringing them along. Maybe they don't want to go, but I'm going to bring them along because then I benefit socially and they benefit physically and socially. So there's always that kind of a choice to make. And so make the best choice most of the time.
Yeah. And, it's a little thing, but sometimes if you have a buddy and they just text you in the morning and say, hey, how'd it go? Or are you heading out? Like it's really hard to not do it. Right. And
then lifestyle. Okay. So I have Parkinson's. I can still, it's a 2-story house. We're on the 2nd floor right now. That's fine right now. And I hope it is for a long time. House cleaning. I kind of like a clean house. So, it doesn't bother me. I can clean house. I don't have to spend money trying to get somebody else to do it or let it get dirty. I can do the daily things I want to, need to.
As long as you possibly can, right? Yeah. So Polly says, listening to Lorraine brings me joy.
Oh, Polly, thank you.
Sweet. Agreed. Okay, so are we going to move on to the blood flow restrictions? So I would love for you to I'm sure that there are plenty of people that don't know what blood flow restriction is. So can you talk about the research and then what it actually looks like?
Sure. So this was something that came about from the first study that we did. We noticed that when we were working with individuals with Parkinson's disease, that oftentimes their hands would be purple, their fingers. And this is something that we've actually, my husband and I have owned 2 gyms and worked with people with exercise a lot, and young, old, athletes, non-athletes, everybody. And it just stood out in my mind. There's something that is off. There's something not quite right. And then, of course, you do a little bit of research and figure out, okay, there is some vascular disruption. There's some increased prevalence of cardiovascular disease, even though that was in the early 2000s thought, no, this isn't the case because these people typically are not smokers. And, there are these things that, kind of were assumptions. Well, you're probably not going to have increased cardiovascular disease because we don't see all these major lifestyle things that are causing this to happen. So the vascular issue was very interesting. And that was actually, I did a lot of research at Baylor University working on my doctorate with vascular issues. So a lot of like chronic kidney disease. And then a lot of my stuff was with postmenopausal women and vascular disruption. But I thought this was incredible. And I wanted to look into this more. So I realized, okay, this seems like there's a vascular issue and the research can definitely support this. And this seems to be, and it gets really complicated, and I'm not trying to, I won't try to, if it's too much, just tell me, but there's the autonomic dysfunction is, aside from the motor symptoms, this is very disrupting to the quality of life of a person with Parkinson's disease. There are issues with proper vascular flow, and that affects every organ. It affects your digestive tract. It affects your ability to go to the bathroom. In a lot of cases, it affects your digestion. It can make eating food so uncomfortable. There are so many non-motor symptoms that have not necessarily been the center of research, and it's all this autonomic dysfunction. And this is something that it has all, and it's still revealing itself, to me as I explore the literature more and work with more and more people with Parkinson's disease. So whenever you exercise, you have this really amazing vasoconstriction response around your organs to divert blood to your extremities that are doing the work. So you should have vasodilation in your arms and legs and vasoconstriction pretty much everywhere else. Your brain should actually get a little bit more oxygenated blood during exercise. This is a signaling issue. This is, okay, I'm going to release things to vasoconstrict, and then locally, I'm going to be able to vasodilate. Well, this is disrupted. And so someone with Parkinson's, their ability to divert blood to the area that's working is limited.
Right.
And their vessels are not responding in a way that our brain makes our vessels respond. So my vessels I'm going to get a muscular pump if I'm doing bicep curls, or if I'm doing leg extension or leg press, I'm going to have that. Well, that seems to not be happening to the degree in our individuals with Parkinson's disease. So not only is it a resting and a digesting issue, it's also a fight or flight, an exercise issue whenever you stimulate that energy system, that nervous system. So this autonomic nervous system, you have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, and both are being affected. It's almost like this miswiring, this miscommunication that your body's just not doing what it's supposed to do. And I teach cardiovascular physiology, and blood flow is everything.
Yeah, it's almost like, we all have these very complicated circuitry systems, and the person with Parkinson's they're not switching on right. Each little piece is not switching on at the right time for all of these things to be working efficiently.
Well, Annie's heard me say this before, all the years of teaching about exercise and well-being and trying to do it myself the best I could, be very consistent all my adult life, and thinking about the neuroprotective nature of exercise. And then I get Parkinson's, and it's not in my family. I have no genetic, my genetic testing showed no, links, etc. And so locally, we have some neurologists. None of them really specialize in Parkinson's, but they'll see us. And the movement disorder specialists are 2 hours, 45 minutes up to however many hours away you want to drive. Well, when I made an appointment, I met mine, or I guess I could say I met mine at a Victory Summit.
Oh, nice.
She talked about medications. And so then after the meeting, I went and I said, "Are you taking new patients?" Well, you get in 5 months later. But anyway, she's up in Lubbock, Texas. So when I first met her, one of my first questions was, "Okay, tell me about this neuroprotective nature of exercise and why it didn't work for me." And she said, "Well, my first answer is it probably delayed the nature of the progression so that it really wasn't identified as Parkinson's by having this, and this show up." I thought, well, okay, I can live with that. And then, of course, I find it fascinating. We'll talk about exercise as medicine, or we say, it's like medicine. Well, American College of Sports Medicine, I'm pretty sure it's ACSM, actually trademarked or registered that phrase, exercise is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love talking about that with people. And I say, well, if you'll take your meds every day, it's cheaper if you'll exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to take the Parkinson's meds.
Yeah.
I say you have to.
Mm-hmm.
You should, have to.
Yeah.
But why leave exercise out? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's so critical
Mm-hmm.
until
Yeah.
you absolutely can't.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand at some point the body will fail. We understand that.
Yeah.
But the blood flow restriction, helping people meet their resistance training goals, that's good.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be doing it willy-nilly.
No.
Let's make sure we talk about that, because
Yeah.
there's articles about athletes and people in the gym. They'll get a band and just restrict flow. And I'm going, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Annie, why don't you just talk about the simple basics of how that cuff works and what we do?
Okay. So whenever we made this observation, realized there's an autonomic issue, and the vessels are affected, it's what can we do to perhaps get this vascular response. And in my way, I just kind of, in my brain, I think, wake the vessels up. Because the vessels, yes, when you exercise for the first time in a really long time, they will wake up and you will feel, but a lot of people with Parkinson's don't experience this. So what we did all the vascular assessment, and sure enough, our individuals that we tested, and it was close to 40 individuals we had. So we got a big group of people, luckily, and it was from, I think, the impact we made from the first study, but we were able to get a large group of people, and we were able to test their vascular health, and it was poor. So we did a vascular reactivity, meaning, do you vasodilate like you're supposed to? And sure enough, no. We had numbers that are indicate very poor vascular reactivity. And then we do this thing called a transcutaneous oxygen censoring test. So diabetics, let's say they have a wound and it won't heal, and this wound has been there for months. A lot of times when it gets infected, it's a horrible issue, and they have to see, are we going to amputate this limb or not? So they'll put these sensors on the leg, and they'll do this raise and lowering test to see, again, your vessel reactivity, but also just your ability to hold circulation. Well, our individuals who had Parkinson's did not have diabetes, but they presented the transcutaneous pressures of someone with diabetes. And
Wow.
it was very, and there were some that were just awful. I mean, they're and a lot of
You,
times,
Lorraine?
limb. Yep.
Made me
Wow.
so angry.
Mhm.
I'm beginning going,
Yep.
why do I keep trying? But I mean, I'm going to keep trying, but
And
I was floored.
Yeah. And it's the progression too. I think you could go out and you would have a normal day. I think you would like walk laps around most any college student that I have. You really would. She's one of the fastest walkers, even with your stature. My stature too. She could beat me easily. But it's just and I know it's case by case, but I think there's so much prevention. And even though you're frustrated and you say, why is all this happening? It shouldn't happen. You just keep on keeping on, because she is, I mean, doing amazing, and will continue to do amazing as long consistency is key, and that progressive overload and that physiological disruption, that's key. And so with the blood flow restriction, that's what we saw the problem, and we showed with the testing there's a huge vascular issue, even with people who do exercise, and people who don't exercise, it's terrible. So we want to wake the vessels up. It's very hard to do that, and to create a muscular pump and allow more blood flow to the legs and arms. You lift heavy. So you do high intensity resistance training. You lift very heavy, and you target type 2 muscle fibers, and you use more anabolic means of energy production. When you do that, you do get a great muscular pump. But how feasible is that for most people with Parkinson's disease? So I was able to go to a training, and it's through Owen's Recovery Science, and was able to, it's a huge lit review of the training, and I loved every minute of it. But it's amazing. There's muscular components to it, there's growth hormone components to it, and then there's vascular components to it. And that's where really I honed in on that. But you put a cuff, it looks like it needs to be the wide cuff always, but you put a cuff around your upper extremity or your lower extremity. It has to be very high up so you don't cause any damage. And of course, need someone trained, someone who's been through the certification process, and they typically are physical therapists or athletic trainers, and sometimes researchers or exercise physiologists as well. So you have this blood pressure cuff around your arms or your legs, and you inflate the cuff. And with the cuff inflated, it does not allow for blood to flow to that area that you're exercising. You trick your body into using type 2 muscle fibers, the fibers that you would use with sprinting and jumping and heavy. Yep. You target those muscle fibers, and it burns and it's not comfortable, and you get through the repetitions, and then you are able to you vasodilate. So you induce that muscular pump. It's a very local response. It's your brain is not having to make this like cascade of events happening with the autonomic nervous system. It's a local response, and it's very physiologically disrupting. And so we were able to see, we tested something called homocysteine. And homocysteine is indicative of your endothelial function. So your vessels in your capillaries basically have this endogenous nitric oxide, and they're able to release a substance, and you're able to vasodilate. And then there's whole cysteine methionine system that should occur, and homocysteine is indicative of you don't have that good vascular function. So we were able to improve the vascular markers that I was talking about before with this blood flow restriction. We did 4 weeks because we wanted to see, is this working or is it not? We didn't want to do it for any longer because we were the first to do this type of research in a group of people with Parkinson's. There's a case study that was published, but that's it before we did this study. So we were able to see the diabetic numbers that I was talking about, that improved into a normal population. So that just in 4 weeks, we're able to see improvements in homocysteine, and we are able to see that vessel reactivity improve as well. And we compared that to just heavy lifting. So we did 3 sets of 8 heavy. Everything was seated, and we chose to use exercises that were isolated, meaning like you're sitting and you're doing a leg extension instead of a leg press, because we didn't want to disrupt the hemodynamic load or the blood pressures. We didn't want to increase blood pressures tremendously in something that could already have an increased blood pressure effect by restricting blood flow. So we're very cognizant about the way we designed that exercise protocol.
And so, and not that I'm encouraging anyone to do this by themselves. But I just want to preface this, but how long did you leave the cuff on? Did you take it off immediately after the set, or did it stay on?
You relieve the pressure
right after that.
So we did what I call intermittent blood flow restriction. So a lot of times whenever they're working with professional athletes, people who do this, and it's very effective for preserving the integrity of your quadricep if you tear up your knee, for example.
Yeah, I've done it a lot in PT.
Yes, right, correct. So they would typically work their way to one exercise, then deflate, and then keep it inflated for 1 and 2 exercises, and then 1, 2, and 3, and you keep it inflated the whole time. And that is a lot. And our individuals with Parkinson's disease would become so, if we did this, the hypotension, the low blood pressure would be enormous, and their risk of passing out would be really high. So intermittent is what I would suggest. So intermittent blood flow restriction with someone who is trained with the wide cuffs, only the automated system, none of the pumping up cuffs, because it can adjust. So you would do 3 sets of, we did 3 sets of 20. The protocol that is often used for athletes in rehab especially is you do a set of 30 and then you do 3 sets of 15. And that is, either way, it's really hard, but you deflate before you move on to the other exercise. We alternated lower and upper body. So you do an upper body exercise, move to a lower body exercise, and you deflate between every exercise, but not set. You keep 3 sets under the inflation, and then you deflate and you get a little bit of a break, and then you do it all over again. And our protocol was pretty rigorous, and we were able to see great changes in just a 4-week period. And I think like with anything, it should be periodized. So there's a time that you do it, you see improvement, you get away from it, and you come back to it. And so I think periodization with Parkinson's is incredibly important. I think you shouldn't just stick with one thing. you progressively overload, and then it's time to switch it up a little bit.
So when you did this study, did you also, again, keep the pairing of cardiovascular in between, or were you just studying this blood?
No, we did blood flow restriction in comparison to high intensity resistance training.
Okay,
We didn't do
great.
the cardio. Now with our outreach program, we always, even through COVID and the, just having to be very cautious, we kept our outreach program going, and we have guided workouts for everybody, and we keep those. We didn't want anyone to lose the benefits that they were seeing from exercise. So we have our student workers that work one-on-one typically with our, not everybody is a part of that, but a lot of people are like, oh no, the research study is over. What are we going to do? And
Right.
well, let's figure this out. So a lot of our folks still come, and they'll do the combination with the cardio and the resistance training.
Great. And so for people watching and checking out with your PT is a really good idea. Most PTs are familiar with this, not everybody, but it's something to bring up and say, hey, do you have experience with blood flow restriction? Maybe we could try it out. So again,
Right.
not on your own, but with somebody
No.
who knows what
Yes.
they're doing.
That's correct. Yeah. And what we monitor really closely were the blood pressure changes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're going to typically see is the first week of exposure to this, you're going to see pretty big drops in the diastolic blood pressure. And we always monitor, do you feel lightheaded? Do you feel okay? And we let their blood pressure reset itself. So typically diastolic blood pressure can climb a little bit during resistance training. During cardio, it should stay the same. Systolic climbs. And
Mm-hmm.
systolic should climb because you're rerouting blood. So with diastolic blood pressure, when it's dropping, that indicates that vasodilation is likely occurring in the working area. But an individual with Parkinson's disease may have the inability to kind of override and vasoconstrict to divert blood back up to the brain. And a lot of times passing out can happen, even if you're at rest. It doesn't even have to be during exercise. So it is very crucial to do a protocol in a way that's not going to be cause that hypotension and passing out.
Right.
And of course, someone being there, but also the physical therapist monitoring blood pressure throughout the exercise session is key. And if it's dropping too much, then the exposure has been enough, and let their blood pressure reset. And then the next week you can add a little bit more to it.
Yeah. So it sounds like, in any case, even if you have somebody who's, particularly fit, if they've never done this before, seated is a great place to start. So that can be monitored a little bit better. So somebody asked, I'm not sure if you have the answer, would Raynaud's be another reason for restricting free blood flow?
Yeah. So with Raynaud's, even cold exposure. So someone who gets in an ice bath, their vessels, it hurts really bad. And what happens after you get out of an ice bath is, of course, you have vasoconstriction around your extremities. If you have a healthy heart, your vessels around your heart actually vasodilate. They should, at least. But then you get out of the cold, you have this vasodilation that occurs, and it helps to warm the body. This doesn't happen with Raynaud's. So there is a vascular issue. I am not aware. I'm sure there is, but I haven't looked up any research specifically to see if blood flow restriction could seemingly help with this issue. But to me, it's kind of the same concept that we're talking about, is the endothelial cells aren't getting the signal to vasodilate as they should. And perhaps you can override that autonomic nervous system and get a local response. So my guess would be, I would say, it would be really important to look at the literature and see if it's trending on, hey, this is a positive thing. And then your availability to a physical therapist is state by state. And so sometimes you have to get a doctor's referral. If there's literature to show improvements in vascular function, then great. A lot of times, though, people with Parkinson's disease their vasculature is not checked because they don't have diabetes. Well,
Right.
unless they do have diabetes. So, how would you ever know if you have disrupted blood flow? You don't. Your toes maybe are purple. You have a mosquito bite that won't heal. Those are indications that you likely need to get a transcutaneous test and done to see if you have decreased blood flow to your extremities. So there are different signs that you should look at, but sometimes you do have to get a doctor's referral, and then you can get into see a physical therapist. It's state by state, but you can find people who are certified with blood flow restriction in your state, and then you can just say, hey, this is what I found. This is what I would like to do. and just be an advocate. I know you don't typically send people with Parkinson's disease to get to go to a wound clinic and get this transcutaneous oxygen test, but you should.
Yeah.
And you should see where you're at, and you should you should on a probably yearly basis see if there's any disruption to the blood flow. So that and
go ahead.
sometimes that vascular reactivity, some clinics will also have that test. We used an Endopat to be able to see that. So that would be another indication that you have a vascular issue, and that should be not ignored at all, because it disrupts everything.
Right. Well, it's interesting, Lorraine, it sounds like you had no idea that you had an issue, right? So it didn't show up for you at all.
No.
Well, what about the scrape on your leg?
It's still healing.
Yep.
Okay. So, I mean, it showed up, but you wouldn't know that was a connection.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That the inability to heal, but she wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of like, oh, this is odd. This isn't healing. This isn't doing what it's supposed to do. And you don't associate that with Parkinson's disease necessarily, but someone who is so fit and so active, like, you should be able to divert blood to that area, get an inflammatory response, and heal. But it took
months.
Wow. That is so interesting.
4 weeks, and it took 5 months.
Yeah.
And it's still discolored, and the skin below it is different.
Yeah.
Have so since you were doing the blood flow restriction, what have you noticed? And did you notice anything sort of immediate and then long-term?
For me personally, I didn't notice a big difference because I can do high intensity if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so the blood flow restriction, it seemed like it was shorter as far as like my workout. I don't know if that's why it felt shorter, but I just remember thinking, I'm done. Wow, that was fast. Because it is very specific.
Right.
And so.
And you're used to pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Some people don't. I mean, the definition of exercise for some people, you're like, well, you walked to the mailbox and came back, but this isn't a physiological disruption. So that pain that you do feel pain. It is short and sweet, but it is intense. If you've been an athlete, you felt that before.
Yeah. Or you got your blood drawn and they smashed the thing on your thing, and then they're like, okay, now go do something with it. Like, you're like, what? Yeah. So,
right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a very odd feeling. When I wrote the protocol and we came up with all of the, this is what we're going to do. This is what the literature said. I went through it before everyone else did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this was so hard. And it was incredibly hard, but it's short and sweet, but it's intense. It's like that. You're going to sprint and you're going to sprint as hard as you can. It's that feeling. Someone described it as, if you've ever run a quarter, 400 meters around the track, it's almost too long, but you have to go all out. And it's the way that your legs feel after that quarter. You feel that, but you're not breathing hard. You don't have that breathing hard, that response with it, which is so odd. But I've had, people, athletes do it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is nuts. And it really is. It is hard, but it's very effective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about that research, and I'm excited for, our community to learn about it and hopefully ask people about it. And, I talked to Lorraine about this. We actually, as the first study that we're ever funding on it. And so together, hopefully this is just going to continue to be more accessible and more, in the literature as a possible intervention. So I'm excited for that.
It's neat. And I think it gets the physical therapy world very involved, which they are, but it's usually short and sweet. But if this could be, I'm going to do this quarterly, I'm going to do about quarterly, that would be amazing. And hopefully we can get resources and more people trained and able to do this. But it's definitely in just 4 weeks, something that we think would be very effective, especially those people that are there was a man that we tested with his transcutaneous oxygen levels, and he laid down and I pulled his slipper off, and his foot was completely bloody. Oh. And the end of his toe was just, there was a huge gash. And I said, oh, what did you do to your toe? What happened? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, you didn't feel this? And he's like, no, I didn't ever remember hitting my toe today. I mean, and there was blood everywhere. And our sweet nurse, Priscilla, she came and helped, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, let me put a butterfly on it. Let me figure this out. But it was alarming that he didn't even
No,
feel. So you have
right.
this neuropathy that comes with this vascular disruption, and it all is an autonomic issue, but it affects everything. So, and you could go on and on with things like that, but it's the knowing the vascular health, whether you have signs or symptoms, yes, but everybody should know, what is it right now? And is it getting better or worse, or is it staying the same? And I also am a big believer that you should have your homocysteine levels checked as well. Just, I mean, it's something that it doesn't seem like a lot of people would even have high homocysteine levels, but
Is this like regular blood panel work, or you have to really
you have to
specifically
ask
ask for
for it.
something? Yeah.
You ask for it. Yep.
Okay.
And then it's kind of this, oh, well, this isn't standard protocol. This is standard care. Why would I have this done? And it's because if it's really high, we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And if my circulation's really low, we need to do something about it. That's why.
Right.
If you can catch it earlier, then you're going to be able to ward off some of these non-motor symptoms that are incredibly disruptive to one's quality of life.
Yeah. So a couple of questions. Well, one's a question, and one is sort of a question I'm going to throw in there. Can you test blood flow to the vagus nerve?
So the vagus nerve innervates a lot of different areas. It's the parasympathetic pathway, and it releases acetylcholine. So your vagus nerve is going to innervate the heart, and it's going to be able to decrease your intrinsic heart rate, which would be your heart rate without any nervous system involvement, typically around 100, give or take. So your vagus nerve is working to decrease your heart rate. And it typically, the more parasympathetic drive you have, the lower your heart rate will be. And it's typically because you have either a genetic reason for having a low heart rate, or you're very trained. Cardiovascularly, you are very trained. So your heart's so strong that the vagus nerve says, oh, I need to release some more acetylcholine. It also is really, really important for vasodilation, for allowing blood flow to come to your digestive tract, to be able to get enough blood flow to your stomach, just to digest what you have in your stomach or your intestines. It's so crucial for your bladder. It is the rest and digest. It's how you unwind. It's why you sleep. It's why you can calm down. It's why you have that calm energy, which is heart rate variability is another thing that is so, we did measure it for the study. We haven't done a study specifically with heart rate variability, but it's I think the next thing that we really should hone in and look at, because it's unbelievable. But your body's ability to balance the nervous systems are incredibly important. Now, the vagus nerve, you're not going to be able to test blood flow directly to the vagus nerve. But a lot of these non-motor symptoms will indicate if your vagus nerve is releasing that acetylcholine like it's supposed to or not. And a lot of times it's not, because there's a disruption in the communication, not because something's wrong with the nerve itself.
Okay. So Audrey says, I have to be mindful of kicking off compartmental syndrome. I can accidentally go into maximum overdrive walk. So, do you know much about compartmental syndrome? No?
I don't think so. I mean, I've heard of it before, but
yeah. So I don't want to, we're not going to go into that now, Audrey, because I want to make sure that you get the right info. But there might be something to look at. And if you do have a PT, talk about what blood flow restriction and how that might impact something like that, right? So super intense, something to check into. Great. So what's on deck? Is there anything on deck with this research?
Well, we are working on the official publication. So hopefully, that will be, not hopefully, we have a really great paper written, and it is, I think it could be very impactful. I think just hey, my vascular health is something that I really need to look at, and something that I think just that alone, if you can just measure that, that's really important. What I would like to see is, I would like to improve heart rate variability specifically, because that means that the autonomic nervous system is balanced, and people who have really low heart rate variability, they have more issues with longevity, with quality of life, just frequent illnesses. There are all sorts of things. There's heart rate variability study for almost any condition. It indicates the nervous systems are disrupted, though. if we can achieve high heart rate variability, it's going to help with all of these non-motor symptoms. It's going to help with vascular health. It's going to help with your sleep. It's going to help with quality of life. So I would really like to hone in and see maybe perhaps it's not, we know exercise is important. We know cardiovascular and resistance exercise is important. And if you can throw some sort of instability or cadence or something in there to help the brain work a little bit harder, great. But what I would like to see is perhaps some of these vagus nerve stimulating exercises. Are they really effective for improving heart rate variability? So you have different things like humming, deep breathing, of course, any diaphragmatic involvement. The vagus nerve and the diaphragm work hand in hand. That's why we hyperventilate whenever we sprint. They just your brain says, "Uh-oh, I got to get rid of some of this byproduct, so I'm gonna blow off all this carbon dioxide." So the ability to improve heart rate variability would improve a whole host of issues that people with Parkinson's have. And I think that's what I would like to focus on next is, can we do some of these diaphragmatic breathing? These seem so pointless, but if you've ever really sat and tried to do a deep breathing or a humming exercise, you're just like, why am I doing this? But it's not necessarily psychological. I mean, it affects the psyche of an individual, but the physiological aspect of innervating the vagus nerve, innervating the diaphragm, and you controlling the diaphragm, and you humming and you deep breathing, and you're very mindful about that, I think could really work wonders in terms of balancing the nervous system.
This makes me think too, Annie, that for our next study, we could bring in folks from speech and language therapy that teach speak out and loud, diaphragmatic breathing and the things like that. It'd be interesting to kind of look at different groups of folks.
Yeah.
And, here all my life, I loved cardio. I mean, I still love cardio. And especially when I was a runner, I was kind of prideful, wrongly, rightly, whatever. But I loved having a low resting heart rate. It would kind of freak the doctor out. I go, that's normal. Don't worry. It's 50, 48, 55. Well, it's good. It's all good, And my blood pressure would be low. I mean, good, low, not bad, low.
Yeah.
And then as this has all developed, I've had Parkinson's diagnosed in 2017, but in the last few months, I found some references in my exercise log back as far as 2010, where comments that I made really lead me to go, there's that rigidity starting to show up already. There's bradykinesia in that left foot starting to show up already. And I wasn't tying those things, of course, to the diagnosis until several years later. But I really think that we're good at bringing in different groups of folks so we have the areas of expertise represented in a study and play to our strengths, so to speak. And so I could see those studies coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And then, just for the community, I love Healthy Parkinson's communities, really advocate for that as well. If folks haven't started that, great for education, great for awareness. Because for me, the awareness was, oh my gosh, how on earth can I have poor circulation? What do you mean my homocysteine level is that? What are you talking about?
Yeah, right. I mean, you're so knee deep in this. And it's not something we talk about at all. Like, I can't wait to already just get a bunch of resources out for people. And I do actually have a lot on heart rate variability just from my own work. But excited to share that with our community and just put it on top of their minds to think of something to check out.
Pros and cons of, learning this about yourself. When I started wearing an Apple Watch, I'm not trying to advocate for that, but for Apple Watch, you can do so much. I can do the EKG, and my doctors have said that's good. There's been research on the Apple Watch, and it's not going to dictate things, but it's helpful information, good tracking. And of course, when I do that and I look at my heart health response, here's my heart rate variability. Okay, just like I was surprised or almost shocked about my vascular, how my body was doing with blood flow and not. When I saw my heart rate variability was so low, I was just absolutely shocked. I mean, shocked big time.
Wow.
And Annie goes, are you sure that's right? And we're looking at the data and I go, it says, and my heart rate variability is poor.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing to say that after all these years. It's frustrating to say that, but it's a fact. I mean, you need to just deal with it.
Yeah. I think that's it, is sometimes you don't want to know, but you need to know.
Yeah.
And then what
Like,
can-
well, how many more things do I need to know? Really? Do I
Yeah.
need to know all these things? How much more
Right.
time do I have in my day to like
Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
them out?
Right. And I think that's why you periodize. You say, okay, I'm going to take a chunk and I'm going to work on this and I'm going to do this. And we talked about blood flow restriction and getting it, you know, a physical therapist will, with heart rate variability, you can measure at home
Yeah.
and you can buy a polar strap. You can see how you're doing. You can do diaphragm exercises at home. You don't have to have the resources to, you know, have to get a referral and see a doctor, which
Right.
is state by state, but there are things that you have control of that aren't maybe as overwhelming.
True.
But in all of this, Mel, because I know we have like 10 seconds, I just have to get in that people want to remember, even though we're living this Parkinson's journey, seek joy, find the positive, the silver linings, find the Annies, find the people around you. This is a small community, but because we have these universities, even though they're small universities, you know, I don't want to be U of M. I don't want to be UT. We are getting personal work with these folks, you know?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And-
think about, you know, from idea to you guys just ran with it. Like you have that ability in the situation that you're in. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Lorraine's going to make everything happen.
Yes, she will. That is so
Kind of
true.
an organizer in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, next time we're going to have to talk pickleball as well. So another great thing to do for exercise. Thank you so much for both of you for being here. Annie, it was really lovely meeting you. And I think we're going to have to talk to you again. You're just a wealth of knowledge and so clear and excited about the work that you're doing. So thank you. And thanks, Lorraine, as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.